want you to imagine for a few minutes what it would be like, what the sweet Owen community of Owen County would be like if Pleasant Ridge Baptist Church wasn't here. Let's go all the way back to 1836. There's always been a church here in this community. What would it be like if God had never instilled into the hearts and minds of people way back there in 1836 to gather together, to form a committee, to pray, as our church records reflect, to establish a church right here? And it's been here ever since. Now, for the record, I was not the pastor here in 1836, okay? Just need you to know that, okay? But what would it be like? And now that we have been here all these years, has it made a difference? Has it made a difference that this church has been here as a lighthouse, as a beacon, as a salt shaker after all these years? See, I think it has made a difference. We can't even begin to measure the difference that this church has meant to so many lives. Over the years, there have been people that have been won to Jesus Christ, countless number. I have no idea how many. Only God knows that. People that have come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. Those that have recommitted their lives. Those that have been challenged to look at their lives and say, I need to get my act together. I need to do things right. I need to serve God. And those that have done that. We've had people from this church that have made such an indelible difference in their lives, in their communities, and some have spread out all across the world. I think about the ripple effects of the teachings, the preaching, and the ministries of this church. How it's affected our community, how it's affected our county, our state, our nation, and even the world. Now, do you think that we have made a difference in this community since 1836? Do you think that we've made an impact? Certainly I do. I want you to be a part of the difference. I want you to be a part of the impact that we need to be, that we must be, that we should be. See, I believe that a community without a church is a lot like a life without salt. You like salt on your food? You're awake today, aren't you? Okay. You like salt on your food? Now, some of you may not be able to have that. I don't put a lot of salt on, but I do like salt. Well, Jesus is talking here, and he's teaching the Sermon on the Mount. And I've talked to you about that before. Soon be 11 years ago, I was in the Holy Land, standing right there and preaching right there on the Mount. But here we find Jesus telling his disciples in the 5th chapter of Matthew, verse 13, and you may need to know and may need to be reminded that the Sermon on the Mount takes up chapters 5, 6, and 7 of Matthew. And he says, you are the salt of the earth. You're the salt of the earth, and you're going to be hearing that a lot this morning. You are the salt of the earth. He goes on to say, but. Now, anytime there's a sentence, or anytime somebody is talking and there's this but, doesn't it have a way of getting your attention? But. You're the salt of the earth, but. You want to listen a little closer. What's going to follow after that preposition. But if salt has lost its taste, if it's lost its savor, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything. It serves no purpose. It's only good to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. May God add his blessings to the reading, the proclamation, the understanding of his holy and blessed word. You are the salt of the earth. You know, that was a compliment. When Jesus gathered those disciples together and he looked at them and said, "You are the salt of the earth." He was complimenting them. He was patting them on the back. He was encouraging them. You are the salt of the earth. It was particularly a compliment in that day and time because there wasn't more than salt shakers in kitchens and in homes like we have it today. Salt was a very rare commodity in that day and time. In fact, the Greeks referred to salt as the second soul of meat because it was able to preserve that meat. A half a pound of salt, at least in some people's thinking of that day and time, was worth more than a human being. Human beings were everywhere. Salt was almost nowhere. And you've heard me tell you this before. Soldiers were often paid with salt. That's where we get the word salary. You've heard people say, well, he or she's not worth their salt. That means they're not worth what you're paying them. It's not worth their salary. So when Jesus is looking at these people here on the Sermon on the Mount and saying, you are the salt of the earth, I could imagine they were saying, wow. That was a wow moment for them. Wow, thank you. That's nice. I appreciate that, Lord. You are the salt of the earth. It was a compliment. He was saying, in essence, you are valuable. You are valuable to God. You are valuable to society. Now, if you went in my car right now, you'd probably find a couple of those little salt things that you pick up at a drive-thru. Probably got a couple of those. Undoubtedly, you've got those in your home or salt shakers in your home. But just exactly what does salt do? What does salt do? Well, let's look at a few components of salt and see how we can parallel salt to us, since we are to be salt of the earth. First of all, it has flavor-enhancing properties. Flavor-enhancing properties. You know, I love my French fries, but I want salt with my French fries, okay? And there's no better French fries. Well, Ralph, I better not say that too loud, okay? Y'all had some pretty good French fries when you had the family billiards. But there's something about McDonald's fries and salt that just seems to go together so well. And for French fries and maybe other foods, if we do not have salt, it can have a very bland taste. Salt has a way of adding zest to our food, to our meat. Now, likewise, Christians are to be the spice of life. And we need to carry that spice into our everyday walks in life. Maybe it's at the school, in the classroom, at the workplace, in the office, out at the local club, in the community. You see, I really don't believe that the good Lord ever intended for us to live dull, sour, uneventful, meaningless lives. In fact, Jesus said in the 10th chapter of John, as he records it, verse 10, I have come that you may have life, and to have life more abundant. To have life abundantly. Now, I like that. Don't we want an abundance in our life? Don't we want that sense of joy? Now, if we are indeed the salt of the earth, then we can sprinkle that salt into the lives of others, and they can have that flavor. I like to call it a sense of savor in their lives. It gives them importance and significance and meaning. How many Christians do you know that walk around with the frown on their face, acting like they were weaned on a dill pickle? There's people like that. Now listen, if you are indeed a Christian and you are the salt of the earth, you've got some savoring power. Now we need to be sprinkling that into the lives of others. Okay, the next thing I see about salt is It owns the property of melting ice. Now, last night when I went to bed, I thought, well, I get here pretty early on a Sunday morning. Might be some ice on the sidewalk, so I'll check that out. I was prepared to put salt down on the sidewalks because salt serves as a de-icer. The other morning, I was headed down the road, and there was a salt truck in front of me. Now, there was ice on the road, a thin layer of ice. I was glad to see a salt truck spreading ice or salt on the road. Wouldn't do any good to be driving that salt box and there's ice on the road and not be sprinkling the salt. That salt was put there for a purpose. But in our current day and time, let's think about it. Human beings have grown so cold. They have grown frosty, I guess I could say. In fact, they have grown to the point where their lives become icicles. Icicles brought about because of indifference and apathy. And those icicles are now serving as a dagger to be stabbed into the hearts and lives and souls of so many. We see that all around. We have so many cliques in our societies today. We have racial walls that have been built. We have so many cultural differences that need to be addressed in a positive way. We have cold-blooded murders out there. And those are people that's saying, I don't care about God. I don't even care about you. All they care about is themselves. What's in it for them? It's me, myself, and I. What I'm saying, folks, is it takes salt. It takes Christian salt. Us getting out of the salt shaker and spreading ourselves into the world. Thawing out the cold-hearted people that need what we say we have in church. They don't have it. Okay, well, we know that salt adds flavor. We do know that it thaws ice. But another thing that salt does, it induces thirst. It induces thirst. I like country ham. You like country ham? I like country ham. But if you're not careful, you eat too much country ham, and you're going to be running to get something to drink. Because salt in that ham creates a thirst. You ever gone to a movie theater? I can't go to a movie theater without getting me some popcorn, even if it's a small bag. And on that popcorn, there's going to be salt. And I'm going to request extra butter. What does that salt do? I really think these theaters have it going. They put a lot of salt on there. Because the more salt they put on there, the more you want to drink. The more drinks they get to sell. So salt has a way of creating that thirst. Now you've heard the phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. That's true. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make that horse drink. But I'll tell you what you can do. You can put enough salt in their oats. They'll be looking for the first watering trough around. Okay? Salt has a way of creating that thirst. But salt is also a healing agent. It heals. Over the years, I've been to a dentist or an endodontist and in their chair many, many, many times. I've had reconstruction surgery on my teeth and on my gums. Invariably, when I leave that office, they're going to give me as discharge instructions. You need to gently rinse your mouth out with salt water. Why salt water? Why not sugar? Because salt is a healing agent. What about a sore throat? Ever had a sore throat? Something I'll do. Done it since I was a little kid. Go to the bathroom, get a little cup, put a little salt in it, and gargle that water. Because salt is a healing agent. Now, folks, Christians are to be like that in society. Now, if you study history, then you'll find out that Christians go where people are hurting. That's what we're supposed to be doing. That's part of the salt of the earth. You know, that's why we have meeting the needs and the reach programs and things like that. It's because people need healing out there. They need healing physically. They need healing emotionally. They need healing maybe psychologically. There's some people that need healing financially. And the church is to be that healing agent. We go where people are sick. We go where people are hurting. On the mission trips that I've been on, whether they've been local mission trips or somewhere in the state or somewhere in another country, the reason we're really going there is because people are hurting. Maybe some of them are so hungry. You know, in Brazil, people have such poor medical needs. There are such great medical needs, but such little medical help. We're reaching out, being that salt of the earth, allowing them to heal emotionally, physically, and otherwise. I think many of you would be surprised to know just how many healing centers that we have across the country that all began with Christendom. They were Christ-centered. There's hospitals. My goodness, St. Thomas Hospital in Nashville. You got St. Anthony's hospitals that used to be in Louisville. You had St. Luke Hospital in northern Kentucky. You got St. Elizabeth. You got Christ Hospital. You got Good Sam Hospital. All of those started out with a Christ-centered need of helping people, healing, helping them heal. But then I also see salt as being a preservative. And I grew up on a farm, and my dad tried his luck at raising hogs. We weren't too good at that. But I do remember us having a hog killing one time. It was cold. I remember that great big cast kettle that we had, trying to cook that lard. But what I remember most about that is an old wooden bin. I guess he made it. We put salt in there. And we put those hams from those hogs in that salt. And it preserved that ham. And I asked a couple of people in the 9 o'clock service this morning who were killing hogs earlier, a few months ago, Thanksgiving Day, I believe. Isn't it true that when they are salt cured, they can last indefinitely? They can last for years. Probably not 400, but they can last several years. Salt keeps the meat from spoiling. It keeps the meat from rotting. Now, folks, let's stick your head out the window. On your way home today, on your way out of the car and into your house, try to take a big, strong whiff of what's going on. And you'll smell a stink that's going on all across our land. I can't figure it all out. It overwhelms me when I think about it. Now, we're to be salt. We're to be the healing agent. We are to be restoring and preserving and helping meet the needs. I find it interesting that last year, 2019, this was reported. Might have been others that weren't reported. But there were 721,885 vehicles stolen last year in America. Then in New York City, they have something called fare evasion. Fare, paying a fare, F-A-R-E, fare evasion. In New York City, what they do is they have so many subways there. And if you've been to New York, then you know that, like Washington, D.C., and some of the major cities, Atlanta, they're big subway systems. But in New York City, they have a problem with people jumping the turnstile. They get there, they don't put their money in, they don't put the card in. They just jump and get on the subway. And for New York City, it is costing them right now $215 million in lost revenue. Well, call it what you want to call it. That's still stealing. Even if it's a buck or two at a time. People stealing. Hundreds of thousands of bench warrants are issued every year to people who fail to show up for court. And then in 2017, and this is the closest statistics I could find, there was 19.7 million adults that battled drug addiction. And interestingly enough, in that category, adults are constituted 12 years old or older. Almost 20 million people 3 years ago. And then babies all over our country are born every day toxic. You know what I'm talking about? That means that their mother was on crack cocaine. What about the effects of that down the road? There is a stick-up in America somewhere on the average of every 6 minutes. And there was over 282,000 armed robberies last year alone. And if you're looking for a job, don't go to a major city and be a cab driver, because cab drivers suffer the highest murder rate of any occupation. And folks, let's just see what's going on. What about all the protesting? What about all the violence? What about all the killings? And that's not just happening in the last week or two, but for the last several months. And we could go back even years. All across our nation. Is it getting any better? Is it going to get any better? Where is our nation headed? Where's our nation headed if we, right here in this salt shaker this morning, and we acknowledge that we are salt, if we just stay right here in the salt shaker? What difference is it going to make? Where are we going to be? Are we out there making a difference? You know, our society needs the salt of Jesus Christ in their lives. They need that salt to preserve. They need that salt to preserve marriages. They need that salt to initiate and to sustain genuine friendships. I had a guy that texted me this week and said, I just don't have any friends. I've had people jealous of me because of the friends I have. And all you have to do is just get out there and love people. You may not love what they do, just get out there and love them. Let God sort them out, okay? Take care of the rest. Being the salt of the earth. You know, we need to be more effective in our parenting skills in our society. We need to renew racial dialogue, and we need to restore the values in our society. Now, folks, listen. If you don't hear anything else, you listen to this, okay? If we decide to withdraw, if we decide to get in our own little cocoon to ourselves and be that salt in the salt shaker and never get out and never make a difference, you mark it down. Our children's world and our grandchildren's world will not be fit to live in. Why? Because the salt isn't doing its job. And our job is not to stay in the salt shaker. We've got to get out. George Gallup, a very well-respected and famous pollster says fewer than 10% of Americans are deeply committed Christians. Fewer than 10%. Now, if you read that article a little further, you see that he is saying that fewer than 10% of those who claim to be Christians are indeed committed Christians. Well, what do we got here today? I'd say at that rate, we're probably looking right here, maybe 5 or 6 committed Christians. Does that make the rest of us bogus? Make the rest of us fake? Fewer than 10% are deeply committed Christians. That's our problem. You want me to point the finger to what I think the problem is? We are. We're salt. We know we're salt. We know that the Lord said, you are the salt of the earth. He was speaking to us too when he said that. Well, we just stay here in our salt shaker. Not making a difference out there. We need to be more involved in practicing our Christianity. We need to be more involved in practicing what we preach. We need to be more committed to prayer. Praying for our church, praying for our people, praying for our nation, praying for our leaders. And we need to exert a greater influence out there in the community. We need to exert a greater influence out there in the community. See, all it takes is just a little pinch. Just a little pinch of salt. And if you take your pinch of salt this week and you sprinkle it out where you are, and you and you and you and all of this, I believe, and we keep it up, I believe that we can begin to see the effects. Just like salt. It only takes a little pinch of our witness to make a difference. Jesus did not say, and correct me if I'm wrong, he did not say, you are the sugar of the earth. That's not what he said. Is you are the salt of the earth. And because we're the salt of the earth, we need to be out there flavoring people with the love of Jesus Christ, showing them the difference that He's made in our lives, supposedly, and He can make the same difference in yours. De-thawing all of those frozen individuals. Not de-thawing, de-icing, thawing them. And quenching a thirst for the Word of God, a thirst for the love of God. See, they see that when we are the salt of the earth. Now, Jesus gives a compliment right there. And Nathan, you can put that verse back up there because we're going to look at this again. Starts out with a compliment. Hey, you are the salt of the earth. Hey, I'm complimenting you. You're the salt of the earth. Uh-oh. There's that but. But if salt has lost its taste, how effectiveness is the salt? How can that salt be restored? How can the saltiness of the salt be restored? See, it's no longer good. If we've lost our saltiness, it's no longer good. Just throw it down on the ground and stomp on it. It's not any good if we've lost our saltiness. Is that what is happening and what has happened in our society today? We're losing our saltiness when it comes to being effective out there in the marketplace. It's not any good. We're not any good when we've lost our saltiness. Pleasant Ridge Salt Shaker. We're here today. We're grains of salt in that salt shaker. Every one of us. And I might say we are grains of salt, not just one grain. We're grains of salt. We have our own pinch of salt that can be used every day. But here we are in the church, in the salt shaker. But unless we get out of the salt shaker unless we go out to the highways and the byways, unless we go out there in the marketplace, unless we go out to our communities and to wherever the Lord puts us in a given day or time and be the salt, we can't be effective. In fact, we see a spoiling world right now. I think largely because the salt hasn't been doing its job. We should have been doing this a long time ago. What we see going on in our country right now didn't just pop up. It's been going on for a long time. And I really hate to say this, but I believe it's been going on largely because the salt has lost its saltiness. And we're not effective. Now, maybe the big question is it too late? Is it too late to change things? Have we reached the point of no return? Or is the meat just going to continue to spoil and there's nothing we can do about it? No. No, we are the salt of the earth. But we've got to get out of the salt shaker to make a difference. We can stop the spoiling when we get out and do our work. But again, I remind you, we are ineffective. We have lost our saltiness if all we do is stay right here in this salt shaker. We've got to get out, make a difference. We've got to flavor the world. We've got to encourage. We've got to sustain. We've got to de-ice the cold hearts. We've got to create a quench of thirst. We've got to be that healing power in order to preserve the land. Let's pray.